This is Quenching Visions with Adolfo Perez, founder of Grinding Technology LLC, and Andrei Kolesnikov, co-founder of Steersman Company. We'll discuss business planning, learning execution, restarting from scratch, cash flow and financing, entrepreneurship, creating and destroying personal life, demanding improvement versus accepting people as they are. We've known each other since a couple of months before you started working full time in your first business. If that's almost 20 years by now. And you went through all kinds of things in life, right? So your family moved from Cuba to Venezuela when you were a teenager. Then, still, while you were a teenager, you moved from Venezuela to the United States. You did a bunch of things. And then you started your own company. You had partners in there. You had a falling out with your partners. So basically, in a way, you lost your business. You worked for some other people. Then you started another great company. So, well, looking at you now, seems like you do what you like. You live where you like. You are able to afford things that you like, right? You own your own plane, for example. I guess you gave up motorcycle racing. So that's a loss in there or not. But I'm really looking forward to learning a little bit of details about your journey, and perhaps you could share some information about the values that you think defined some of your journey.
Sure. That's about right. In a nutshell, that is kind of like a big picture of my story. But I'm more than glad to share anything that you want to know.
All right. So your current company is Grinding Technology LLC. You manufacture and engineer tools to cut metal, right? So you engineer them and make them to really, really high performance standards. So you get good life and quality for your clients. And you also do it really, really fast, well, compared to the industry. And so it seems like you haven't done any type of fancy marketing, growth hacking, expensive CRMs or anything like that. You haven't used these types of things. You've been focusing pretty much on the old-fashioned getting things done, and it's been working for you. So I guess my question would be, how did you get into this in the first place?
Well, Andrew, when we met back then, 20 years ago on General Automation, I used to be in the other side of the fence. So I used to manufacture components and I was dependent on tooling. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that it was a void there. Because when I needed tools, I needed to wait, like you say, the industry standard. When you go to the big guys, you need to wait sometimes 5 weeks, sometimes 12 weeks to get tools. And, at that time, I thought that it got to be a better way. It have to be a better process, and it have to be a way of being able to manufacture tools a little bit faster and give people service, a better service. And I started thinking about that, and that's why I put the first business. And like you say, I had a fallout with my partner, and that's water under the bridge. And I don't regret anything that has happened in my life, because number one, you can learn from your failures, and number two, your failures sometimes, when you look back, they actually benefit you. Like, for example, if I didn't had a fallout with my partner, I would probably still be living in Illinois. And as you mentioned, because I came from Cuba and then I moved to Venezuela, I'm a kind of like a warm weather guy. So I wouldn't have been happy in Chicago all the time with all the snow and stuff like that. So life kind of throw me a curveball, but at the same time, it gave me an opportunity that since I didn't have the business anymore, then I could pick and choose where did I wanted to move. Yeah. And that's why today we're here in Texas.
Yeah, it's 70 degrees instead of approximately 45 in Chicago today.
Yep. I'll take that any day.
Got it. I understand. When it came to creating your business, right? So planning the business, you told me earlier that you think that 80% of a plan is what's needed, right? So if you try to plan the business 100%, then it just never happens. And I completely agree with that. I think that well, there needs to be some kind of a sound basis for a business, right? So you need to do some kind of math where it makes sense in general. The revenues and the expenses that are viable in there. Does it make sense to start? But then you kind of have to start at some point, and then you have to just prepare for things to be a little bit worse than you anticipated, I guess, right? Prepare to struggle longer. And I think that a lot of businesses specifically fail because the owners, they didn't prepare for this, right? So they didn't have capacity to deal with setbacks, or maybe they're intimidated by some setbacks, or maybe they just decide that because of the setbacks, they just don't feel like it anymore, right? And they just kind of stop. So in your business, it seems like you had different things happening. So could you say something about a few unexpected events that happened on your path, either in this business or your previous ones, or previous one? And then how did you deal with those things? What went wrong? What happened? How did you react?
Sure. So first, let me tell you, yes, I did mention to you previously that you have to plan, but you don't have to be 100% all the time perfect, because then you kind of get paralysis analysis. That's kind of what I call it, right? But you're planning every detail, and you want everything so good that you never launch your business. So you have to get, obviously, you have to plan for contingencies, you have to plan for problems, but you can just don't expect the perfect moment. Like you can just don't say, okay, I had to find the perfect place, the economy had to be booming, everything had to be perfect for you to launch your business, because then you'll never launch your business. So I'm a firm believer that you have to be more like a doer. I mean, you do plan for the stuff, but once you have kind of like the big picture put together, then you just go for it. You want to make sure that you have, obviously, a small amount of money in the back for the things that you didn't plan, or the nags that you're gonna get along the way. Like, for example, when I start this business, I plan, I build a network of people that promise me business if I started my own business. And one of the things that happened is that the amount of business that they thought they could give me and the amount of business that I thought I could get, they were totally different on what in reality happens. So at the beginning, when I first started this business, my whole idea was that I was going to sell my products to distribution only, and I wasn't going to go direct to a customer or anything like that. But the couple distributors that told me they would give me business, they did give me some business, but it wasn't a lot. And then I find out that other distributors, they were really hard to get in there and get them to trust me or buy from me. But again, since I was determined to succeed on my business, then I had to regroup the way that I was thinking that I was going to, be able to have the business running. And I realized pretty quickly that I needed to go and start selling direct to other customers. So we did that, and we did that for a few years. And then the distributors came around.
I see.
Once they saw.
So in the end, after you built trust.
Right. Once they saw that our product was getting into the hands of the end customers, and the end customer was happy and all that stuff, then they realized they wanted to have us too.
So they didn't quite help you build the business, but they wanted to partake.
Right.
In a way. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Exactly. So you have to plan, and have contingency for that kind of stuff, because not always everything is going to go as planned.
Of course. Okay. And then in your first company, you had a falling out with the partners. So could you suggest some kind of maybe specific clauses into a partnership agreement or shareholder agreement that you think would have helped you in your case?
Yes. So the first time I did that, obviously, I was very naive, and uh, my dad was from like very old school, where people would shake hands and you wore what you buying.
Right.
And I was raised that way, and I didn't think anything of it, right? And the fallout with the partner that I have, it was because a lot of stuff didn't get put in writing.
Right.
So
very common. I think
it was a lot of right. It was a lot of assumptions, that you assume that, well, this is part of an owner's responsibility. This is part of this, and then you come to see that if you don't specify everything, people may have a different thinking of what your thinking is about each person's responsibility. But regardless that, I would say that you have to, if you go into business with a partner, you have to think, and this sounds bad, but trust me, it needs to be that way. It's kind of, let's say, when Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or somebody like that, they go on and they're going to marry somebody. And before they get married, they do like a prenup.
Right.
Well, with business, you had to kind of plan for the divorce, even if you're not thinking that you're going to get divorced, because it's almost like a marriage. So that's what I'm saying. You cannot assume that everybody knows the responsibility. You have to put it all in paper, and you have to plan, like, if tomorrow, this will be broken up, who's going to get what, and who's going to do what, and who's going to keep what. And if you do that, I guarantee you're going to spare yourself a lot of headaches and a lot of litigation. So that would be the key thing that I would tell everybody. I mean, and you have to be detailed, even to the point that you have to even determine ahead of time how you're going to evaluate the business.
If you split?
If you split. Because, when it comes at that, then somebody could say, oh, well, I'm evaluating the business with this X multiple, and you think that it should have been this X multiple, and then the numbers don't jive. And that's, where the arguments start. So when it comes to the contract and partnership and stuff like that would be my advice. The other advice, and some people may not like it, but the other advice I would tell you is, like, if I would have to do this all over again, I probably would never partner again with anybody. You have to, and I think people partner sometimes for the wrong reason. Like I know for sure I partner for the wrong reason. I partner because I wanted to share the risk, because I didn't have enough confidence on myself,
right?
Thinking that, hey, you can do this on your own. So I was looking for like a safety net.
So instead of complementary,
right? Like complementing, like, oh, well, if I cannot do this, maybe this person can do it. And I think that's the wrong reason, because, well, obviously, I had a fallout with him. So again, for me, my personal recommendation, because the experience I have is, I wouldn't partner again with anybody. And if I would do that, I would make sure that I own at least 52%, so I still control the decisions.
Yep.
But I mean, everybody is free to do, whatever they feel, is best for them. But I mean, I think partnership sometimes is harder to keep the partnership that actually running the business.
It could be, right? So, but I guess one of the suggestions you would put out is to establish valuation of a company, the specific formula.
Right. So the different business and different industries, they have multipliers.
Right.
Right. So basically, I mean, just to give you an example, you can get into an agreement and saying, hey, whatever the profitability of the company is, we're going to use a 4 multiplier.
Right.
So meaning that, if you're profiting $250,000 a year, well, the business is valued at 1 million because you take the $250,000 profit times 4 multiplier, that's $1 million. And if you do that in the contract and you say the multiplier we're going to use is 4, then there is no discussion.
Right. It's just that. I think
everybody agree, that it was going to be 4. So now they can just don't come and go like, oh, the business is worth 2 million. No, right. It's not, because we only had 250,000 profit and we say the multiplier was 4, so it's 1 million.
Right. It becomes harder when the business has some kind of a spool up time, right? Maybe you have to work for a few years and then there is no profit, but you're kind of building into the future, and then it makes valuation in the early stages harder.
Yes.
And also that's where a lot of stress comes into, while you're not making any money.
Yep.
Kind of building for the future, somebody could run out of money, and then what do you do? So I'm guessing that in a way, writing up some kind of equity splitting that's contingent on work, right? Contribution might also work.
Right.
But that's hard.
Yeah.
You didn't have this type of problem though, right?
I didn't have those type of problems. Lucky, I guess, for us, we were profitable pretty quick. But I would say that at that point, if you put it on the contract, whatever assets there are or whatever liabilities there are, then they should match the percentage of ownership that you have. So if you're 50-50 and you have $100,000 on asset and $50,000 on liability, well, that leaves you with 50,000 on assets. You divide it by whatever percentage you own, and that's the part that you get on the company. If the company need to be breaking down because you're not profitable and you're going to close it.
Right. That's in case of closing. No, I mean more like in case of just deciding to split up.
You could do it that same way. You could put it on the contract at the beginning, that as long there is no profit yet, then, you're just going to divide the assets and the liability. It's kind of hard to start putting sweat equity in the middle of it, because think about it. When you're going to put a business, you should know that that you're going to have to contribute with sweat equity,
right?
And if every partner has already determined, what the role is going to be in the partnership, that should be in the contract too. But it should be very easy to say, okay, you're not doing your part because you're not showing up to work or something like that, right? But the sweat equity is kind of like a giving, and if you're not making any profit, then you're not really making any money,
right?
So there is no money to split. Right. The only thing you're going to be able to split is whatever assets you bought or you put in there at the beginning.
Okay, clear. So moving on from the unhappy stuff and the problems, what do you think led to successes in your business and I guess life as well?
I would tell anybody out there that the main thing that you had to have for success is you had to have an idea, you had to have a plan, and you had to be relentless. You had to persevere and you had to go get it no matter what, and you cannot quit. If you do whatever you want to do long enough, you'll succeed. Because every business is going to have up and down. I mean, there is no business that goes down in a straight line, but there is no business that goes up in a straight line either. Business go up and they go down depending on the decisions you make. Sometimes you make a wrong decisions, or hopefully you make more right decisions than wrong decisions, right? And your business goes up. But
as long as you don't suffer some kind of a critical mistake where it
exactly where you ruin yourself, right? But even if you do that, if you start all over again and you keep persevering and you're persistent, you're eventually going to get it. Because two things happen when you're running a business. Just like I told you that you plan for like 80% and then you launch your business. Well, when you start a business, nobody knows everything.
Of course.
You may have a strong point where I'm going to say maybe 90% of what you need to know, or maybe less, 80%, because you really never get to know everything. I mean, I consider myself that I'm a pretty strong engineer, but when you look at other industry and other people and stuff like that, you got to get humble and realize that,
Yeah.
okay, you don't know that much. That there is a lot of people out there that know a lot more. And there is a lot of people that if you put all that knowledge together, then your knowledge is like this little bit
Right.
compared to all the knowledge out there, right?
It's this thing where the more you learn, the more you know how little you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but the good thing about it is like when you're persisting and you keep doing it, you look back and then you get amazed how much more stuff you have learned. Like when I first started, I was strong. My strong point was on machining, but my weakest point was on sales. And then you have the finance aspects and the booking and all that kind of stuff, and you start learning on that. And I tell you, after 3 years over there in Chicago running my business, and now 15 years here, is total 18 years running businesses. You learn a lot.
Mhm.
And that's why I say you look back, to like the beginning and you go like, I didn't know anything, and I still went for it. But like I say, I think the success come by you persevere and keep consistent and putting an honest effort every day and being humble and keep your mind open. Because I think that's the problem with a lot of people. They get to a level where, they're good at something and then they get cocky. They start thinking, oh, I know enough and I don't need to learn anymore. And that's basically what dooms them.
Right.
But if you keep your mind open all the time about learning more, you're going to realize that every day, every month, every year that passed by, you look back and you go like, man, I'm a better person or I'm a better business person that I was last year. And you just keep growing.
Right. Little by little every day.
Yep.
So it looks like one of the defining things in your life in general is that you never stop learning. Would you be able to recommend some strategies or, I guess, for strategies for learning, or perhaps how do you seek out insight or advice? And in what cases, perhaps you should be kind of careful about getting advice, or, what type of people?
Yeah. So one of my like my number one rule, if I see that I have a deficiency in something, I want to learn on something, I'm going to try to find, number one, a person that is better than me on doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this may not sound really good, but I will give you an example. I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that my parents and my mom always wanted the best for me. But when it came to finance, I could not ask my mom for financial advice because my mom didn't have the knowledge. So even that, I'm pretty sure she had the best intention that anybody else in the world will have,
Mm-hmm.
because the connection that is from a mom to a son and the love there is there, her advice would probably guide me through the wrong path. I probably would have keep working a job 9 to 5 and saving a couple dollars in a saving account and don't getting my dollars work for me.
You wouldn't have a plane.
And I wouldn't have a plane, and
Yeah.
and I wouldn't have race motorcycles because she told me that was going to be a
Dangerous.
killer and dangerous. So you had to kind of figure it out. You can't just don't go blindly and listen to everybody's advice, because that's something that unfortunately everybody has an opinion, everybody has an advice,
Mm-hmm.
including me. So if you want, to learn about businesses, you want to ask somebody that has a business, somebody that has been successful in business. If you want to ask about financial advice, find somebody that knows how to invest and that has a proven track record investing and getting a good return out of it. If you want to fly a plane, find somebody that knows how to fly a plane and been flying for a lot of years without any problems, and so on, right? So that, I think that's the main thing that people have to realize. They don't want to take the advice from the neighbor unless the neighbor is an expert on what they're seeking advice
Right.
for.
So basically, good intentions and usefulness of advice, it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
It's not the
Exactly.
same thing. But in general, in terms of learning, from what I understand, you kind of learn by doing, right? You get into things, just repeat,
Yeah.
learn,
So
repeat.
the humans learn I think like three ways, because we got odd sense, right? So we learn by seeing or watching, right? We learn by listening, and we learn by doing. um, so if you can combine the three of them, you're going to learn a lot quicker.
Right.
Me personally, because here's the other thing: different people learn different ways. There is a lot of people that just by watching something they learn a lot. There is other people that they need to hear it and read it, to comprehend it. And then there is some people that they need to do it. Uh, it doesn't mean that you can just do things without reading or seeing it first. And same thing, it doesn't mean that you're going to learn just by seeing it. But what I'm trying to say is that
they reinforce each other.
some people learn the bulk of it by one of them. You still need the other two.
Right.
So for me, if I don't do something, I don't learn fast enough. I have to read something, or somebody had to show me something, but then I have to do it. And if I do it and I repeat that, then that kind of, it transmits to my brain, and it gets engraved in there. And now it's there forever. Now I can remember it, because I'm more of, I need to picture, and do what is supposed to be happening to really get my brain, going and remembering that. So if I look at something 20 times and I never do it, I still probably don't going to know it.
Got it.
But some people are different. Some people, they may look at something 20 times and do it once, and then they're good.
Right. I think it depends also probably on the thing too. But I think that I have a similar learning method to you. I have to read about it, but then if I try it, then my retention of the thing is way, way better. Pretty much for any topic, almost, I think. Okay. So in our prior conversation, you told me that you believe cash flow is one of the most important things in business. Could you tell me a little bit more about this, and perhaps also describe this situation you had where you purchased some equipment and then you basically, I guess, miscalculated a little bit and brought a bunch of risk on yourself?
Yeah. So I'll give you two examples. I'll give you the example of the equipment, and then I'll give you the example of 2008, when the housing market went down and the economy went down. So back like maybe 12 years ago, and I'm sorry, I should not say 2008. Let's use 2022 with the COVID. Back like 12 years ago, when I first started growing the business, I was a little bit like the shop was a little bit like the bottleneck, because I didn't have enough capacity. I could have fixed the capacity maybe by working Saturdays or working Sundays and bringing people longer hours and stuff like that, but I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to burn the people out. And I decided I was going to buy another machine. And what happened is, once you buy a machine and you sign a contract with the bank, that contract is for 3 years, for 5 years, whatever you sign the contract for. The bank doesn't care if the economy goes down. The bank doesn't care if the customer walks away. The bank doesn't care about anything. All they care is like every month you got to make that payment. You cannot fire the bank. You cannot fire the machine. You basically stuck with that machine now for 5 years. So I bought the machine, and as you know, our equipment is very sophisticated and expensive. So it's not a $50 type of stuff is, $350,000, $400,000 piece of equipment. So you buy that, and you have a big monthly payments now that you had to make. And for the first 3-4 months, it was going good, because I have all this work that
Kind of like a backlog or something?
that in my mind is like, okay, well, now I'm getting all this backlog out, right? But then the work kind of slowed down. And then I didn't have enough to fill up the machine. And the machine was working only like 10%, 20% of the time. But now I had to pay 100% of the payment.
Right.
So that put me in a very difficult moment. And I started seeing my cash flow, go down. But lucky for me, I had enough. That's why I'm telling you, it's very important to have enough cash flow to be able to
Survive.
and fend, any curves, that get thrown at you. So that was one time. And then as the time passed by, like, 6 months later, 7 months later, we got busy again, and the machine got, running at 80%, 85% all the time. And then we were good. And then the other example is when COVID came in, it was kind of like the same thing, a lot of restaurants here in Texas, and I'm pretty sure over there in Chicago, same thing. But a lot of business went out of business because they couldn't stay open. They didn't have the cash to stay open. Well, it didn't affect us that much because we had enough cash flow. We had enough cash accumulated, and the business was producing enough cash that even when things slow down, your bank account goes down, but you know that, okay, I got enough there, to be able to stay in business for another year and a half. Well, things get better. And sure enough, then things got better, and, and we were okay. It's unfortunate because I don't know exactly the statistic, but if you look at it, a lot of small business, they only have like a couple months of reserve. So if anything goes wrong, and they cannot recoup in 2 months, that's it, they're off. So, I know it's hard, and I know, people may think, well, how are we going to get there or whatever, right? But I think the way you get there is, I think a lot of business, they take more risk than what they should, and they leverage themselves too thin. And that's why they have so little cash, because everything is reinvested on the business. And this comes out because a lot of business owners, and don't get me wrong, I don't think that you should not be greedy. You should be a little bit greedy, but you should not be that greedy when you leave yourself exposed to extreme risk.
Right.
So if you try to grow a little bit slower, you can manage better your cash flow, and you can have a lot of more cash on the bank sitting for that rainy day. If you use all that and reinvest it and leverage it, then when that rainy day comes in, then you don't have anything to fall behind.
So it's this great unforeseen risk. If you don't plan to have some kind of an event, and it happens, then all at once you're out.
Yes. Yep. I see a lot of business owners too, that they start, and every penny that they make, they spend it. They just go and they buy this nice car, and they buy this plane, and they and I'm not opposed to that, but you have to do that when you really can afford it. You have to do that when you have enough cash.
Right.
You can't just don't use every single penny that you take out of the business and invest it on something for your life enjoyment, and then leave the business basically naked. Because then when something happens, then you don't have a way to save the business.
Got it. It's interesting. I have bootstraps 2 companies pretty much. And so I'm so used to this frugality, just not spending anything ever. It's hard for me to even allow myself to buy something for myself. It's an interesting thing. I guess it's good in a way because, the companies live and I live. I just don't have too many fancy things.
every extreme is bad, right? I
But
mean,
yes, that.
if you're way too frugal,
Mhm.
it's gonna come the point where you're gonna be burnt out, and you're gonna ask yourself, "Why am I doing this when I don't see any benefit?"
Mhm.
Right? So the way I usually do is I like to reward myself with the small things every time I achieve a goal.
Mhm.
So if I say, hey, if we're gonna get to this amount of money on sales or this amount of money in profit, then I'm allowed to take this much and treat myself to something.
Right.
But like I say, always thinking about I need to leave enough in the business so the business can keep operating, and then hopefully keep giving me more money. Right?
There's got to be a balance.
It's an act of balancing. What is too much and what is too little.
Yep.
And that's part of running a business too, that most people, they may not understand, because I have seen both extremes. I have seen people where they just go at it, and every single penny that comes in they spend on something, and then I have seen people that are very frugal and they don't want to spend anything.
Makes sense. So then, could you share some insights, knowledge, or perhaps connections, perhaps some kind of people that have enabled you in the past, right? Maybe enabled your business, enabled you to do something, or perhaps they saved you from some pain or some expense or hardship. Some kind of people or insights.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can precisely answer that question, but I'm going to try the best. Like, for example, I try to run myself with people that are business savvy and that they have their own businesses too, stuff like that. So that way, when we have a conversation, because here is something, every business owner, if you're in business, it's because you like it. Not everybody can have a business. If you don't like what you do, if you don't have a passion for that, you're probably going to fail. So guess what happened? When you go to dinner with business owners, the conversation almost always ends up about business.
Right.
Oh, what are you doing in your business lately? What have you done new? What this and that? So it's good, because then you can see what other people think and what other people do on their business. And a lot of businesses, believe it or not, a business, they're very similar. Even that they're different, they're very similar. The structure is similar. They all have balance sheets, they all have profit and loss, they all have cash flow. So when you look at that, then you can see, how other people are managing that. So I try to surround myself with people like that. Again, same thing. I try to always get advice from people that know more than me or they're higher up than me. I would say that I am very grateful. When I was in general automation, my boss, you remember Max Stark?
I think that he was before I came in. So I heard so many stories.
You were already with Ed.
Yeah,
right?
there were so many stories about him. He was like this phenomenon in there, but I haven't actually ever met him.
Yeah, so I'm very grateful of this guy, because he owned the business. His father founded it. And he took me under his wing, and he basically was my mentor. I mean, I learned so much about business and the ins and out of the finance and the books and all that stuff from him, because the technical part I knew, right, from the engineering and stuff like that, but everything else, every other moving part of the business, he was willing to teach me. And I ask questions all the time. And if it wouldn't be because of him, I probably would have never started my business, because I didn't know how.
Right.
So I gotta say that part, he saved me probably for a bunch of failures before a success. Because I was lucky that I got that shortcut, right? That somebody told me, hey, this is what you do, this is what you don't do.
Right.
And he didn't do it because I told him I was going to open a business or anything like that. I mean, at that point, I didn't even thought about opening the business, but he did it because he wanted to make sure that I knew how to run general automation.
Right.
But that saved me a lot of headaches starting my own business later on life, right? So that was a good thing. And now, I mean, I got a couple people that they own businesses, and the businesses are bigger, than mine. And I try to hang around with them as much as I can and learn from them as much as I can.
Got it. And when you were getting a loan for this company, what type of bank did you end up getting a loan from? And do you think it actually mattered, what type of banker, what type of bank?
Yes. So here is the thing. I cannot recommend you a bank per se, a name, because what I find out is that different banks have different appetite for things. And what I mean for that is, like, for example, I did my toes on real estate, right? Well, to make the whole story, for example, when I first went to start this business, I went to like 6 banks, 6 different banks. I went to Wells Fargo, I went to US Bank, I went to Bank of America, and I went to Chase, and I went to a credit union. And every time I went to a bank, I basically got rejected. I went like, no, we don't do those loans. No, we don't want you here. And then finally Chase said yes. Okay. But where I'm going to is 8 years later, and a lot of more money and a lot of more success and everything, I went to Chase and I told them, hey, I want to buy, these properties. And Chase told me, oh, we don't have any interest on financing real estate. At least not that type of property. I was looking for apartment buildings, right?
Right.
But then I went to Wells Fargo, and it was just like that. It was a breeze. They went like, oh yeah, sure, here. Fill up the application and here's your loan. So what I'm trying to say is, like, for all those people out there that are going to go to a bank and ask for a loan, one thing, you do need to have a business plan, because every bank, even the one that want to give you the loan, is going to ask you for it, right? And you need to have some type of track record. I mean, you have to think about it. The bank is going to take a risk on you, and either you have enough money to pay it back, and usually if you have enough money to pay it back, then you wouldn't be asking for a loan, right? Or at least not for that big of a loan. So they are going to take a risk on you. So you have to put them at ease by showing them that you're capable of taking that money and transforming that money into more money. So when I went to Chase, I had to take my business plan. I had to take projections for the first 3 years. I had to take my resume. I went through an interview, with the bankers. And once I convinced them that, that their money was going to be, I don't know, 90% safe, 80%, I don't know what percentage they were measuring, right?
Sufficiently.
Right. But it was sufficiently safe for them to give me the money. Then they approved my loan. Because sometimes business is the bank is taking, a leap of faith with you, because sometimes you don't have the assets to back up the amount of money that you're asking for.
Right.
So, I would tell anybody that make sure that when you go and apply for that loan, you go in there knowing that you had to have resumes, you had to have experience, you had to have that kind of information available, because they are going to ask you for it.
Got it. Okay. Sounds good. So the next topic, I guess, for me is, often in media, entrepreneurs are portrayed as these brilliant visionaries, because in reality, most of the time when we hear about somebody on the news who is an entrepreneur, it's when they made many, many millions, or they raised many, many millions of money from investors, right? They're doing something amazing. But in reality, for the majority of people, including those ones that are raising a lot of money or making a lot of money, the path to this, or a general entrepreneurial path, is filled with struggles and hardships and sacrifices, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done before you get to success. So in your story, there are plenty of ups and downs, right? Well, started the business, pretty much lost the business, started another one. A lot of things happen, right? So can you tell me your thoughts on how entrepreneurship, your choice to pursue entrepreneurship affected your own life and perhaps your relationships with your family and friends?
Okay, so let me say this first. You're right. The media only portrays the guys like Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, extremely successful people, and I don't want everybody, to feel like you cannot succeed unless you get to that level of success. You don't have to be an innovator. You don't have to be an inventor. You just have to be good at what you do and monetize it, right? And be persistent and do it over and over. I guess what I'm trying to say is you really don't have to reinvent the wheel in order to be successful. You just have to improve the wheel. You just have to take some process or something that somebody else is doing and figure out, okay, how can I make this better? And if you can figure out how you can make that better. So in a sense, yeah, you have to be a little bit of an innovator, but you don't have to be an inventor. You don't have to have the unique ticket or the unique item that nobody else has done ever again, right?
Right.
Now, with that said, you do have to be prepared to have a lot of hard work, long hours. People, I have heard people sometimes saying that it's an exaggeration, that Elon Musk works 14 hours a day or that he sleeps at his Tesla factory. And I will tell you, it's not an exaggeration. I have done stuff like that when I need to get something done because you have a deadline. So that's another reason why a lot of people, I think, they don't succeed because they get into the business world for the wrong reasons. A lot of people, and this I will blame the media for it. The media glamorize all the success, but they don't put all the efforts that you had to go through and all the problems that you had to sort out. So a lot of people think that, being a business owner is gonna be having all this money and having the plane and having the boat and having the expensive car and having all these vacations, but they don't see what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
Right. And I would tell you for sure, there is no balanced life. I hear so many times people talking about like, I want to have a balanced life. You want to have a balanced life, you find a job 9 to 5. Right. So you can have your weekend off and your nights off and time with the family. When you first start a business, you're going to have a family that understands you and that supports you. Because if not, you're either going to have the business or you're going to have the family. You don't want to have both. If your family doesn't support you, you don't want to have both. You're going to have to choose because you're going to have to spend a lot of hours, feeding and making the business work for you. And you don't want to have enough time to do anything with your son or with your wife or whatever. So that is something very important that people have to realize and they have to have in their mind. And yes, I mean, there is going to be few and far examples where somebody invented something on the internet and he does 2 hours work in the day and then the rest of the time he's having fun and he still succeed. Right. But those are going to be the far and few in between. Yeah. The typical entrepreneur, the typical business owner of a factory, of a manufacturing facility, of a restaurant, of a hardware store, of a clinic, of a dentist practice. Those guys are going to put a lot of hours at the beginning, right? And for the foreseeable future. And then, once you get established, when you have your clientele, when you have a good team ensemble and you can start delegating in your team and stuff like that, then then things get easy. But you have to realize that probably for the first couple of years, it's all on you. You're the executor, you're the planner, you're everything. Right. So you have to, even if you have employees, you have to supervise those employees and you have to teach employees the process and the way you want the business to run before you can let them go and by themselves. So it's going to be a lot of work on your part if you do it. So you have to have the commitment because it's not easy. It's doable, and a lot of people do it, and I think a lot of people succeed. but you have to have the commitment.
Got it. So I'm guessing that in your case, your family supported you.
Yes, I'm very fortunate that my wife and my kids, they were all in. It was countless hours where, we barely see each other, maybe half hour at night. When I came, I was tired. I went, a half hour, take a shower, eat something, go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day I would get up so early that, everybody still was asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for quite a bit.
Yeah, there must be significant trust in the partner to go with it for a year or two. It's not like it's a month, right?
It's not like it's a month.
It's a marathon.
Yeah. It's a marathon. Yeah, a business is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Right. Next question kind of follows what we were just talking about. How did you go about starting building your team? So, what would be your recommendations for the first few hires? How do you approach it?
Well, obviously you have to you come up with a job description of what you want that person to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you go and hire people, or maybe you get somebody that it gets recommended by somebody that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing I would tell you is you will be very, very lucky if the first person that you get is the perfect person. So you have to keep an open mind, and this is something that I don't think anybody likes to do. I've been in business and management for 30 something years, and I still don't get used to, and I still don't like it, when I had to let somebody go.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you're running a business is a business. You have to, you can't just don't be sometimes the nice guy that you want to be. You cannot keep a person that is not giving you 100%, or that it doesn't have the skill set that you need. Sometimes people, put stuff on the resume that they don't know. Sometimes, and then you hire them, they're with you for, a couple months or whatever. And then you realize, man, this is not the person that I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
Or their attitude change, or whatever, and then you just have to let that person go and find somebody else. But you should never settle for less than what you want. And sometimes, I think attitude have to do a lot too. If you find the person with, for me, I'd rather have the person with the right attitude and a little bit lack of skills.
Mm-hmm.
They have a person with a lot of skills and not the right attitude.
Right.
Because the skills are teachable.
Mm-hmm.
The attitude is very hard to change. So if the person doesn't have the right attitude, it doesn't matter how much you teach them, that person is not going to be a fit for the company or the environment that you're creating. But if the person lack a little bit of a skills, you can complement that, you can teach that and bring that person up. And as long as the attitude is good, then you have a really good employer or a really good manager,
Okay.
that you can use.
And then a follow-up question on that. So how did you choose who to seek first, second? Your first employee and your second employee, what did you hire for?
Well, when I first started, you had to realize that as a business owner, it's going to come the time where you cannot do everything. So what I did is you have to think, okay, what is the first person or what are the first tasks that I want to delegate?
Mm-hmm.
And then you hire a person based on that. So like for me, it's not that I wanted to delegate that task 100%, but I needed it. I knew I could only run up to a certain amount of machines by myself. And at the same time, do the books and do sales and do everything else, right? So for me, the first person that I needed, it was somebody that eventually could take over running the shop. And in the meantime, while I was teaching him or, whatever, training him, that he could help me with certain amount of the equipment. So that way I didn't have to run everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky because I had a guy that he was working with me on corporate while I was working here in a corporation. That he was a programmer for CNC, and that's kind of like what I was looking for. He never programmed a grinding machine to make tools before, but he programmed lathes and mills and stuff like that. Uh, it was a young, I was going to say kid, but a young man, very smart, right? And and I thought, man, this person is worth to have.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about it, stuff like that. He came on board, and he was with me for 14 years. He left last year.
Mm-hmm.
He had better things to do, and nobody lasts forever. But that was the first person I had,
Mm-hmm.
and I was lucky. I said, because I didn't have to go through multiples, right?
Right.
Now,
But I guess being in the industry kind of helps because you already have contacts.
right. Now, one thing I would tell you that I have a struggle a little bit is finding good salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
That one has been more of a revolving door. So that's why I say it depends. But if you ask me what the take is on this, is you have to do whatever it takes to get the right person in the right place. You never settle for something less.
Mm-hmm.
So if your standard is to be up right here, don't go and hire somebody that is here. And if you cannot bring them up to there, you have to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
You either bring them up there or you have to let them go. But don't settle for being at that level.
Right. Makes sense. Sounds good. My next question, I think, follows up on this expecting more from your team. So there's this idea that you should accept yourself and others the way that they are. And when it comes specifically to setting standards and goals for self or loved ones, I'm not sure I believe in this idea all the way, right? So, that is, if they're not pushing themselves, right? If they're not trying to achieve something more, I think that it's not okay to accept, right? Because I can't reconcile this idea that in my company, I would not tolerate a situation where somebody in any kind of an important role was not growing, was not trying to make themselves better. If they weren't doing that, it would be unacceptable, right? And then it feels like accepting it in loved ones is basically enabling them in a way to have a higher risk of just being unhappy in life, having an unsuccessful life, right? So I think that pushing your loved ones or yourself, obviously, and trying to get them to aspire for something, try to persevere, right? I think it's really beneficial. So there must be some kind of accountability, right? If a loved one sets a goal, you keep them accountable, you push them, you really support them in pursuing that goal. So I believe that this is necessary. As you know, my children are 2 years old and just a few weeks old. So my children are really small, but this type of topic for me has been on my mind because my children are going to get bigger, and so I'll need to be raising them, right? So my question to you is, how do you motivate your friends and family, and how is it different from the way that you expect things and motivate your employees?
Oh man, that's okay. I'm gonna break that in like two different parts, because here is the thing: my friends and my employees. There is a difference first. When you're running a business, the business portion of it, that's what you control.
Right.
And for me, my employees, they can do whatever they want out there. That's their life. Whatever they choose to be or do out there, that's their problem. And I only can control the part that is when they're basically selling their time in exchange for money, for the hourly pay.
Mm-hmm.
But just like I don't accept substandard people as an employees, I try not to accept substandard people as friends. And what I mean by that is like there is a saying around, somewhere there, and I don't know exactly what the number is, but they basically this it goes like, show me the three people that you hang around with the most, and I will tell you who you are or who you're gonna become. And I truly believe on that. So and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, like if I meet somebody and I realize that those person goals are way different than mine. I'm not saying that that person is a lesser person or human being or anything, but it's just it doesn't align, with my likes or with my goals. So that person and I don't want to become best friends. They don't want to be in my circle. I mean, I'll talk to them and whatever, but it's not a guy that's gonna go to a dinner in a restaurant with me, because obviously we don't have anything in common. So if you would be the person that all you do is thinking about partying and going to the club, and all I'm thinking is about my business, well, there is no common ground in there.
Right.
And I'm not saying that one thing is wrong or the other one is wrong. I mean, for all I care, I may be wrong. I may be the one workaholic or whatever. But accepting somebody, it doesn't mean that you need to be friends with somebody. So I accept everybody for what they are. I mean, I have no input on what you want to be or what the next guy, wants to be. But I do have a say on who I want to hang around with.
Right.
And that, like I say, that doesn't mean the other person is least person or I'm the least person. But, I just want to line up myself with people that have something in common so we can talk. I would say that when I was racing motorcycles, I had a lot of friends that all were racing motorcycles because that was the common denominator there, right? So if you have somebody that all it thinks is about going to the movies, nothing wrong going to the movies, but let's say I don't like going to the movies, well, I don't want to hang around with that circle of people just because the fact that they're going to be talking about movies and I'm going to be talking about racing motorcycles or about running a business, right? So you have to align yourself with people that give you, that takeaway, or at least that have a common denominator, right? And like I say, and like when I was racing motorcycle, I tried to hang around with people that were faster than me, so I could learn how to go faster, right? So if your interest is businesses, then try to hang around with people that are into businesses, and hopefully people that are farther ahead, on the race, of how to build a business. Now, I said I was going to break it apart because with the family it's different. You can just don't get rid of the family. Like you can just don't fire your son, right? Well, I mean, I guess you could, but it's a lot more difficult, or it's a lot more problematic, So you try to motivate them by setting an example. You try to help them. And I say, I want to be clear on this. You try to help them, not entitle them or not enable them, or help them. Because I think when people struggle a little bit, they learn. If you give somebody everything without any effort, they take it for granted, and then they don't learn.
Right.
So you have to kind of manage your help in a way that it doesn't burn them, it doesn't make them fail completely, but at the same time, it keeps them hungry. At the same time, it keeps them motivated. And you have to make sure that if you're going to help them, you have to be sure that whatever goal they have, they truly have that goal. Because, sometimes, especially you kids, when they're small, they change their mind all the time. They could go like, hey, I want to be an astronaut.
Mhm.
And then let's say you start paying for a school for them to become an astronaut. And then 6 months later, they go like, you know what? I just want to be the best gardener.
Mhm.
And then you go like, oh my God, are you kidding me? But that's going to happen. So you have to first let them struggle a little bit for them to decide what they really want to be. For me, for example, one thing that I have never done, because I think that that's the first and probably most important decision that a kid have to do on their own, is decide what they want to be. You don't want to influence that, because you want them to really pursue their passion. So if I would tell my kid from the day that he was born that I want him to be a doctor, for example,
Mhm.
right? He may become a doctor, but he may be miserable the rest of his life because he really never wanted to become a doctor. He just became a doctor by default because he hears so many times, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a doctor, that he thought that's the only way, that's the only path to success.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I'm going to make my dad proud. And then he becomes a doctor, and the worst case scenario, he doesn't even practice
Mhm.
because he hates it. And the best case scenario is he becomes maybe halfway decent, but he doesn't explode his full potential because it's not nothing that he was really pursuing.
Mhm.
He did that for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that you should give your kids or anybody by that matter, like input on what they really want to do. I mean, it's okay, to try to steer somebody away from a mistake. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if my kid would have had told me, hey, I want to be the garbage collector, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way either. I mean, every job to me, as long as legal, it's a decent job, right?
Mhm.
But unfortunately, in today's society, you have to realize the skill and the cost of thing and living. So what I mean by that is like, if this job here only pays $15 an hour and the person wants to have that job for life, I don't think it's wrong to kind of have a talk with the person and say, hey, look, there is nothing wrong with you trying to be this person, but do you realize that this is going to be your lifestyle for the rest of your life? Because you're never going to be making, let's say, $250,000 by working at McDonald's,
Mhm.
flipping the burger. If you're happy with that because you like that and that's all your aspiration, then hey, that's fine with me.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think, as parents especially, we should have at least a conversation, like painting the whole picture,
Yeah. You
and
help
not
them
going like, hey,
think it through.
you get in this job because you're getting to eat free burgers, but I mean, is that all you want with your life, to be able to eat a free burger twice a day? Wouldn't you want more out of life? And then if your kid is still say, yeah, all I want is my two burgers, then so be it. Then
Mhm.
that's fine with me. Uh, but once you know exactly what the kid want or what your family member wants, then you if you're 100% sure that that's the goal, you should be able to help them to achieve that goal. And like I say, it's help, is not enabling, because you don't want to take that goal from up here and bring it and put it on their hands right away,
Mhm.
because then they don't realize and they don't learn. Because getting to the goal it should be a journey. It should
Right.
not be like, oh, I just landed here and I have it,
Mhm.
because then you don't know how to keep it.
Right. It's a good exercise in general, right? This exercise of going for something, right? So when the
Yes.
child is smaller, you can try to have them do something that's challenging but achievable. They do it, they see that, okay, they spent 5 hours trying and they got it. So then the
Yep.
next
Yep.
time they could try 8 hours and the next time more. And at some point, they will be open and ready to try for a year
Yep.
to achieve something great.
And that's part of teaching people how to be successful.
Mhm.
Because to me, success, and I mean, I don't say this, I say it, but it's not my phrase, right? I have heard 100 times from 100 different people.
Mhm.
Success is a journey, it's not a destination,
Right.
right? So if you want to learn to be successful, you have to learn how to go through the journey. You can just don't get to the goal
Mhm.
without going through the journey. Because what happened with the really successful people is that goal, it keep moving. That that post, it keeps moving, because once you get close to that, you go like, oh, well, this is doable. How about if I double that? Or about
Hmm.
if I triple that? And then you put yourself a goal that is more distant, because you see that,
Hmm.
oh, I'm almost about to achieve this.
Right. Mhm.
So if you know that now you're almost to achieve that, then you go like, I'm just going to move the goalpost a little bit farther to see if I
Mhm.
can get farther, you know. So now you have a longer journey. So
Right.
you have to learn, to enjoy the journey, not to get to the goalpost.
Right. I guess you could also just shift gears on what type of goal you pursue. So you could be pursuing some kind of a financial goal, and then when you reach it, I guess if you extend that specific goal forever, then it's kind of it's potentially not the best, unless that's really what you want. But
Right,
you
right.
could achieve a certain level of earnings, for example, and then you could say, okay, well now I'm going to be trying to uh, get back some time, right? So and then you could
Yes.
say, okay, well then now I'm going to be making sure that I don't work more than 40 hours or 30 hours a week.
Yep.
I'm going to, that's my goal now. And then you get to that. So you have more time with family and so on and so on. So you could
Yes,
basically
precisely.
develop in
And
different
that's
ways.
exactly how you do achieve life balance,
Hmm.
by achieving your financial goals, and then moving your goal and going like, okay, I got enough here, because everybody gets to a point where they got enough.
Hmm.
Some people have a really high goal and some people have a very low goal, but everybody
Hmm.
gets to a point, or they should be able to get to a point where they go
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm comfortable now. I
Yeah.
achieved what I wanted to achieve financially. So
Hmm.
how do I balance my life now?
Yeah.
And then you go on and you say, okay, I don't want to work more than 40 hours. I don't want to work more than 20 hours, and you set that goal to you.
Hmm.
But financials goal are very important, because even the people that say, oh, I would love to help other people. Well, you cannot really help other people unless you have the means,
Yeah.
right? So if you sitting in the chair where you're the one needing the help, how are you going to be able to help somebody? You can't.
Well,
You
you,
don't you
you could
don't have the
spare, you could
means or the
spare,
resources to help that person.
you have time if you have time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to. I think always you have to first achieve some degree of financial independence, so that way you can better use your time and your money to help people for real.
Right. There's a new book by this guy, Sahil Bloom. It's called Five Types of Wealth, I believe. I just read that, just finished it like a week ago. It kind of goes over this specific topic of pursuing the goal and then focusing on different types of, well, he calls it wealth in there. Very interesting book, but it gives practical advice specifically on these things. So it's very interesting to hear you basically say the same general things that he was writing about.
Well, good. I'll have to read the book. I never hear
You
of it,
could check it
but
out. Yeah, it
yeah,
just came
I have
out
to read the
like
book.
a month ago or something like
Okay.
that. Anyway, I follow him on LinkedIn. That's how I know about it. But I guess it comes to my last question for this conversation. You told me that if you had a chance to live your life again, you would definitely pursue entrepreneurship again. It would definitely be a thing you would do. So, can you maybe share some of your reflection on entrepreneurship in general, and perhaps are there some kind of pitfalls that you see that people have when they pursue entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So yes, I did tell you that I would do it again, because I think it's not only the financial rewards, but the emotional rewards, the psychological rewards, the fulfillment that you feel once you achieve something.
Hmm.
And by the way, everybody is not cut out to be that way. Okay, I think entrepreneurships are people with very high standards, are people with very hard work ethics, and are people that are willing to take certain amount of risk. If you're very risk averse, business are not for you, because you definitely take a lot of risk.
Hmm.
You put a lot of stuff on the line. When you start a business, so that's something else that people have to kind of ask themselves. I am cut out to do this. because I'm pretty sure everybody's not cut out to do that. Um, but with that say, I mean, I would definitely do it again because I have so much fulfillment uh, on all my journey of all these years, uh, that I think that for me it's imperative. I'm so grateful to God that I have been able to experience this, because it's an amazing experience. It builds character on you. It makes you resourceful. And yeah, I mean, it's stressful, and you go home sometimes and you don't sleep because you're thinking, what am I going to do tomorrow to fix this problem that I couldn't fix today, stuff like that. But when you put everything as a whole, as a package, and you had to make a decision, do I want that package again or do I don't want to be part of it? I would tell you 90% of me say, I want that package again. I would do that again. And that's the reason why, when things didn't went good on Chicago, I came here to Texas. I worked for 3 years for a corporate, and I put my business again because I miss it. There is nothing like, that feeling when you accomplish something and you help some of your customers to achieve something. And then that, man, if I wouldn't have been there, that guy maybe didn't do what he was set out to do, or at least not as fast anyway. He would have had to wait 12 weeks for the right tool or whatever. But because we helped that customer, he was able to do that in 2 weeks or whatever the delivery time was at that point. And that gives you a lot of fulfilling. The other fulfilling is like, the way I see it too is like, all the people that work for me, they're supporting their family and their homes, thanks to the business. So I feel responsible, and I feel like, okay, I'm not only providing for my family, but I'm helping all these other families, to have or to make a good living,
Right.
for the business. So it's a very fulfilling thing.
So, do you think that, well, sounds like you have a lot of emotional attachment to your business, obviously, which is very natural for pretty much all or most entrepreneurs. Do you think that has a flip side to it?
What do you mean a flip side? Like a bad side?
Yeah. Like,
well, the only bad side I see about it is like, if you get very, very emotionally attached to the business, you may make wrong decisions when it comes the time to exit. Because you have to realize, I mean, obviously you're much younger than me, but when you get older and older, eventually you're going to start thinking about the time that it comes to exit the business. And if you're emotionally attached, you may not make the right decision, or you won't take the decision at the right time when it's the right time to exit and stuff like that. So that would be the flip side of that. Hopefully it doesn't happen to me. I try to remind myself all the time it's just a business. But unfortunately, you do get attached to the business because you grow it. So it's kind of like, I mean, I know it's an inanimated thing, it's an object, but you start feeling as the business grows, stuff like that. It's just like another kid that you see growing. So you go through so much suffering and so much stress and so much different, stuff every day, especially if you have the same business for, 15 years, like I have or whatever, that at one point that whole inanimated object kind of comes alive. You feel like you're intertwined with the business itself. So, but again, I don't regret that. I just have to control my mind, control my impulse, my emotions, and when that time comes, and that time comes.
Sounds good. Well, I think that it's about time for us to wrap up now.
Okay.
We've been talking for some time. Thank you very much for
It was pretty
taking
good.
the time. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.